everyone. Welcome to Confidence Leads to Success. I have got an incredible woman all the way from Singapore today. She is empowering women to raise their rates, stand out, and make more money. Who doesn't want to do that? Yasmine enables entrepreneurs to connect, stand out, and sell with ease. For the past decade, Yasmin has been helping thousands of entrepreneurs how to craft persuasive stories that sell, because selling is really the main part of our business. If you can't sell, then you've got no business. But she is armed with a degree in psychology and communications, and she's an aspiring armchair neuroscientist who loves to study how to improve sales by applying science to the brain. She is the lead researcher and head story coach at the Sales Story Method. If you're looking to double your income, influence, and impact, tune in because she's going to give you all the tips you need. And I know you'll all follow her. I'm addicted to her newsletters and I adore her. Hi, Yasmin, welcome.
Hi.
So good to have you here.
I'm
I
so
just love I love how you mastered your skill and your gift, and now you're on a mission to help women. And this is one of the biggest reasons I started to do my interview series, to have those women who are so passionate to help others. I'd love you to tell us a bit more about you from your words, and then I'd like to ask you a few questions.
all right. Because this whole series is about confidence, I thought I'd actually start from the very beginning. Because oftentimes when we're on our journey and we're building more of that confidence, we forget that the person on the other side started off very similar to where you might be starting off. And when I first started my coaching practice, I must have been, I'm going to say 23 or 24. And at the time, my father had just passed away. And I looked around in my office and I didn't want anyone's job. I didn't want my boss's job. I didn't want the CEO's job. And I didn't really care about the work that I was doing. I was working in the oil and gas industry. And
Wow.
as part of my journey of figuring things out, I discovered coaching. And coaching for me was the closest thing to therapy, but like so much more powerful because it was all about the future. For me, when I was studying my degree in psychology, it was amazing, but so much of the therapies out there are looking at the past. And at one point, what it's not as effective to get the results. And I like to make things happen fast. So I went through a coaching experience. I got certified. I had a coach, and I realized that the questions I was asking myself was not actually questions that was linked to where I wanted to go. It was questions like, am I good enough? Can I do this? Will someone buy from me? I'm too young. And I just had this whole situation where I was living in what I would call dreadland, right? I was living and I was resident of dreadland where I had fears and imposter complex take over all the things. And it was funny because at one point I was like, but I knew in my gut I wanted to do this work. But because that was like, getting in the way and flogging my head, even when clients would come to me and say, hey, I want to hire you, I would be like, are you sure? Are you sure you want to do that?
Your own limiting belief was like, even though people were wanting to hire you, you were like, really? Are you sure?
Are you sure? Coaching is hard, by the way. Like, are you sure about that? And that became where I was for the first few years of my business. And
Amazing.
also, I was restricted very much so on what I was told by society was acceptable for me. And I don't think people realize this, but like because I had my first job and I was making around like $36,000 a year, I just assumed that would be what I would make in my business. I just kind of assumed that that was my market rate. And because of that, I was getting in the way of myself. And what ended up happening at one point is I had a massive shift. I had a massive shift to realize that if I wanted to help create change, but I was getting in the way of making that change happen, that I wasn't
Amazing.
going to have any change in the world. And because I had seen my father, take his last breath, I was so mindful of like how limited time was. And at one point it clicked, it like literally like a second, it just clicked like that.
Yeah.
And I realized, wow, if I do not go out and I do not share and I do not sell what I have to offer, I will not only miss out for me and the change that I want to make for the world, but also for the people around me who will have their lives impacted.
Yeah,
And when
how
I
much you
got
can help them. It's like holding your gift back. It's selfish, isn't it, almost?
it is selfish. That's why when I teach sales, I'm like, what you're doing is is being really selfish, because every single one of you, you have a gift that you are only designed to make. Like, I am the only Egyptian Singaporean, like, person who has gone around the world, who studied what I studied, who has a different take that can help somebody specifically. And all of us are miracles. All of us are miracles in the work that we do. And when we show up, there is somebody else who will get inspired by what you're doing and will be changed just because you show up for somebody else. And when I made that shift to realize that's what selling is really about, that's when everything changed. All of a sudden, I tripled my revenue, and then I ended up times like 10ing my revenue within like 3 years. And it was just because I understood that shift, and I learned how that with sales there is a structure. There's a structure of how we do things, and when we understand the dynamics of it, it becomes really quite easy, and then we become much more credible in how we do things. And that's the
Oh,
reason why,
fascinating.
yeah.
So fascinating. So I love that how how you just had that shift in that click moment and from triple to 10 times and how you kept growing your business and I see that not as a financial, that means to me how many people you get to help,
Yes.
how many people you get to help to give you that satisfaction. That's always drives me more than the money side. Money is the results of what you receive when you share your gift, and you are a true example of what you are doing there. So what is the common mistakes that women make when they're selling?
So the first thing is really about like sitting with that fear and believing that that fear is correct. So, and we all have our stories. We all say like, oh yeah, like I'm not able, I'm not capable. I need one more certification. Like, I remember when I was doing my coaching program, there was a lady that I knew who got certified in 4 different coaching schools.
Wow.
And she didn't have any clients. And I'm like, honey, like, you getting certified because you want to get more certified is missing the point. Or for example, like, I have people that I've worked with who are like, oh, but I have never done that before. And I'm like, but have you done those results in your own personal life? Could you
Does it
help?
all, does it, do you mean, does it come to your mindset that you think you are not ready? Is that what actually is the biggest mistake that a lot of people make?
Yeah. One of them is like they don't think they're ready, and then they believe the lies that our brain is designed to tell us. So the one thing we have to realize is the human brain is very old. It's like millions of years old, and it's designed to keep us safe. So anything that is outside of our safety zone, we will
Yeah.
create all kinds of lies. And the mistake that you make is they believe those lies, right? Whether I'm not ready, I'm not smart enough, I'm not qualified, I don't have what it takes, all those things. And that's like the number one mistake that I often see. And unless we're able to shift that and realize, wow, like, actually, if that's what I keep on believing, I'm going to miss out on really showing up and to serve as well.
It's amazing. So when you say you've structured um, this technique, so that what you teach people to actually apply it to their businesses, I know it's not something that you could just share it like that. It's got to be a process, and you have to go through certain levels of learnings to finally master that skill. But if there is like one thing that someone needs to start, what would that be for our listeners? What would that one thing?
So the starting point always starts off with understanding the unspoken narrative. And when I look at the unspoken narrative, I look at it from two perspectives.
What do you
First,
mean when you say the unspoken narrative?
yeah, so the unspoken narrative is when we are not actually aware of what we're actually thinking. So what it means, for example, for a customer might think, I have a problem. And the customer might believe, I have this problem is permanent. And if we don't pick that up in the sales process, we will not be able to help the customer realize no problem is ever permanent. And then also customers will also have like, oh, like, the problem is personal. Like, I am the reason that the problem is there. Nobody else will have it. Elif doesn't have that problem, or doesn't have that problem, but I have this problem. So when we are looking for the unspoken narrative, we want to understand certain indicators that our customers will have, whether it's how they see problems, how they see their ability to solve problems. And once we understand that unspoken narrative and we
So
have
you
that,
kind of need to you have to kind of sharpen your skills of assumptions of what people might be thinking when you're selling.
no, it's not even assumptions of thinking, it's really about listening
Uh-huh.
and listening to what is being said and what is not being said.
Okay.
And oftentimes you can hear that in the way people are thinking, when people ask you questions. So, for example, I was giving a talk yesterday, and the questions people are asking was not like a question that was, they weren't asking, like they were thinking they were asking questions, but what was really coming across is like, I'm not ready, right? So the question they were
Yeah.
asking is like, how do you know when you should quit your job and do this full time? How, like, so they will ask you all sorts of things, how do you know if when to invest in a coach, or how do you know when to invest in a graphic designer? It's not, they're not saying, how do you, they're not actually asking that question. What they're actually asking is, will I be able to make it? And if
Yeah.
you cannot listen to what they're actually asking and be trained on how to really listen to what we're actually saying, you'll miss a chance to help them see things differently, because they all think that the problem is like, permanent, many of them, or the problem is personal, where it's like, it's only for me, nobody else has it. When in
Yeah.
reality, we can help them see things completely differently if you really listen to what they're saying.
Amazing. Because a lot of people I whether they're in product or service businesses, I seem to see these common mistake that they don't communicate what they're actually selling with their clients, with their target audience, and that's when they and then some of them, even though they know what they're selling, they don't want to get onto that sale call because they don't feel confidence. So I'm going to lead the question here. So how to build sales confidence? Like, how could they do that, and how could they actually raise their rates? Because that's another big issue.
So there's three parts of that to answer that question. So one element of that is you actually have to know how to run a sales conversation. And oftentimes people don't. And then what they end up doing is they go on a call. And then what ends up happening, at one point, they have to ask for the money and they get really awkward because they try to be overly friendly. And because they're trying to be overly friendly, they kind of like, the brain doesn't get the shift. So, for example, one way of doing that is when I work with leaders, or entrepreneurs, the key thing is like, hey, at the end, this whole call, I want to understand, what is your problem, and if I can help you at the end of this call, I'm going to recommend to you the next steps. Are you okay with that? That's setting the context. This is actually a sales call, and then at the end of it, you also feel comfortable doing that. So the first skill is to actually learn how to have these sales conversations. Now, the second component of it is having confidence that your service will work really well. And oftentimes, what ends up happening is people are lacking sales processes and systems. So when it comes to like them selling, sometimes they're like, when someone asks, like, oh, how do I sign up? They don't even have like the payment link. They don't even have the onboarding email. They don't even have some of these elements that follow up next. So that gets in the way. And the third part of the sales confidence and raising your rates is, once you have a process that works over and over again and you see the results, you could even go ahead and ask your customers, hey, like, we've already finished this work, it's been great. I'm really happy I helped you solve this problem. And I'd love to get your input and your feedback. How valuable would this work for you? I'm not going to raise the rates or anything for you. You're already paid, but I'm kind of curious, how valuable would this be, knowing now what you know, knowing now what you didn't know back then? And your customers will tell you the rates that you should be charging and what they're comfortable paying. And oftentimes, when you hear it from your customers, their mouth, you're realizing, shit, like, they're
I
telling me
don't
that
charge enough.
I don't charge enough.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a story about that. It's like, when I first started coaching, I did not know how to price at all. So I just took my hourly rate at work, I rounded it up, and it was $30 an hour. So I thought I was genius, right? I was like, okay, great. So then I said a coaching package, for example, was 10 sessions. So I times it by 10. But I did not account for the pre-work. I did not account for the
After
post-work.
work.
I did not account for all the stuff in between. And by
Yeah.
the time I did the math, my hourly wage was actually less than someone who worked in a fast food joint,
Yeah.
because I didn't do the math. And when I asked my client how much they would be happy to pay, like I remember this, I almost like fell on my feet. She's like, actually, I would have paid up to like $1,500 to $2,000 because you've helped me so much. And I'm just like, what? And she's like, yeah, it's like I go to therapy and a therapist charges more than this, and I would have paid more because this is better than therapy. And when I heard that, I was like, wow, like I'm totally not even operating from the place. But once you have, first of all, knowing how to run a conversation, you have the structure and systems, which is what I teach in the Unforgettable Authority, then you can have easily the confidence because you see day in, day out, the processes having repeatable success for your customers.
This is brilliant. So what I see is a lot of there are so many amazing coaches out there, so many coaching programs out there. But when someone starts coaching like fresh, they decided to coach about a subject or and help somebody. They usually lack of where do they start, which course to go first, because yes, you need to sharpen your social media presence, you need to do your messaging, you need to do your the systems like you say. So how they can decide which is the first thing to do. I mean, I think is the sale is the first thing to do because you've got no business if you can't sell. But do you, when you start helping your clients, do you actually help them to kind of overall they're creating their systems, and do you kind of give them templates almost
Yeah.
to actually succeed instead of just some I've done some courses in the past. Yes, we've learned things, but we just didn't know how to actually implement them into our system or create a system.
Yeah. So for me, like you said, if you don't know how to sell, then you're not gonna have a business. And
Exactly.
like for example, right now I'm working with a client and they spent quite a bit of money on a branding process at the very beginning. And then a year later, they only made $3,000. So I would not have wasted that time and energy and that money doing that kind of activity unless you know clearly what is the problem that you're helping your customer solve, how are you going to help them solve it, and how will you help them see that you're the right person to do that. So in our Unforgettable Authority program, that's what we do is we help them do that, but not only that, we actually just gives them the easy to follow templates to actually incorporate and to have the thinking behind it. Because, for example, building your sales process, we have a really cool map that we show people, which is your sales design for your services. Because we work with people who are in all kinds of service-based businesses, whether they're a video producer or whether they are, a consultant or whether they're actually a photographer, a videographer. So when you have that mapped out, it's pretty easy to be able to go ahead and do that. And then in our program as well, the majority of time is being spent on practicing running sales conversations. So you can get comfortable with how to navigate the conversation and you get comfortable listening for mistakes people make. And you have to build that muscle, like about what it takes to actually listen in a conversation. Because your customers are telling you what they want, but if you don't know what to pick out for, if you don't know how to distinguish between, what are some of your fear voices, you won't be able to move forward and get more yeses in your business.
I love that because you come from with your degree in psychology and communications, you actually teach them that reason behind certain emotions, certain words, and certain communications to pick
Yeah.
their their pain points, and then you just hit them there.
It's not even hidden there. It's because if you look at, for example, like neuroscience, the biggest element of helping someone change is really understanding that everything boils down to something called neuroassociation. And
Mm,
neuroassociation is all about a simple way of looking at it is people will only change because of two things, which you probably have already heard of, which is pain and pleasure, right? We all know. Any guesses which one makes someone change more? Is it the pain or the pleasure that makes someone change more? What do you think, Elif?
pain,
Pain, right?
of course,
So
yeah.
the key thing is to realize that the discomfort that many people have around selling is a temporary pain. It's a very
Yeah.
short-lived pain. But the discomfort of showing up and serving on a bigger scale is a big pain. But if we focus our energy on the small pain and not the big pain, we will not change.
Yeah.
So when I work with people, the key thing is to help them see, okay, cool, the pain is there, but
Yeah,
where do we focus our energy, on the small pains or the big pains?
yeah,
Because once you understand that shift, everybody wants to do something that's aligned to what they want to create. But if you're making the small pains your priority and your obsession,
yeah.
then most likely you'll not be in business in 2 years' time. And many entrepreneurs don't make it because they focus on the short-lived pain, not the bigger term pain.
I love that. And I also want to say something when you say short pain, and there is no shortcut
Yeah,
for these. And what I always see is like people think there will be an overnight success. Like I can see your success, but you've got 10 years of work that you put into this, 10 years of days and nights of I'm sure work and mistakes and things that we learned. Like it doesn't happen like overnight. You didn't suddenly wake up in the morning and go, okay, I've got 8 figures in my bank account now. And it's not, you have to really work through the steps. You really have to work and learn the process. And we have to process our learnings as well, because there's a lot of unlearning to do from our old habits. And like you said, our brain is millions of years old. There is so much past information in our head that is actually stops us. So we have to do a lot of unlearning to relearn.
for sure. Yeah. And that's why, like, I love how you say that it's no shortcut to success, because my second business that I ended up building and I still am a shareholder in is a video production agency. And because of my experience that I had done in my first business, I was able to take that business from, from 0 to 1 million in 18 months. Right. And people hear that like that's amazing. But it's not because it's amazing, because I did it before.
Yeah.
So when I went to this current business I'm running right now, it was also pretty simple because I had things I could copy and paste. I had things I could actually repeat and leverage. And then therefore it was not a shortcut because the work was already done,
Yeah.
but I got to reuse it over and over again. And I'm a serial entrepreneur, so I also have a card game business. And it was
Card
interesting,
dealing.
card game, right?
Card game. Okay.
So I made a card game last year in the pandemic called Bye Bye Virus, teaching kids about how to be safe against the virus. And
Amazing.
what was amazing is people were uh, like, you don't have any experience. I'm like, but once you get the psychology of how to sell, we were able to take it and go to market and sell it in 10 weeks and generated $22,000, right?
Wow.
And it's not
Excellent.
because of anything, it's because once you understand there are certain triggers that
That's
when you
right.
sell in a certain order, that will generate more sales. And we could have made more if we had figured out how to reach more people. But at that time, it's like a side business and not the priority. But it was still like profitable from the first like launch because we had already covered all the costs of developing the game. And this game till today brings us passive income because we have royalty check that comes in from our sales that are happening every single month. But like,
Amazing.
but so that once you get this element of how to sell, the psychology of how to sell, you can sell anything. And you can also have a lot of fun while you're doing it as well.
Oh, gosh, amazing. You're so inspiring. I'm sure all the listeners are now going, oh my God, how do I get in touch with this woman? I'm going to share all her details at the show notes and we will email the interview to everybody. It has just been so good. I love. So one last question for you. So if somebody is really um lack of confidence to start even their business, where do they need to focus to have that first step?
Yeah. So the first step is to listen to the people that you want to serve. And once you start to shift from the obsession, I literally call it obsession of living in dreadlands, right? Where I used to live for many years. And we start to focus on how can we actually serve and who can we actually serve, then we become more effective. And the thing is, the confidence people are looking at is oftentimes like, oh, I'm either confident or not confident. And that's actually completely incorrect. Because there are areas in your life that you're very confident in, tying your laces, making probably a breakfast. So any skill can be learned. But if you are obsessing on like all these things that you cannot, that will become very hard. So the more you become obsessed with listening to your customers, listening to their pain points, and becoming a master listener, and then the next part of that is knowing how to help them solve that one problem or a bigger problem, then you're on your way to doing great things. And the world needs exactly what you have to offer to it.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you for your very generous gift to our listeners. Confident pricing formula. Brilliant. We'll share the link with them all, Yasmine. Thank you so much. If there's any question I should have asked you, what would that be?
What a great question. I would say probably when how do I know if this is for me? And if like
Yes.
people
How
have
do you
that,
know this is for you?
so if people have that question and doubt in their head, um, we don't want to like have obsession questions about how, right? That is shrinking us. So instead, to reframe it to be like, how can I make this work for me? How can I serve more effectively? And just to be mindful of like, is the questions that you're asking and asking every single day, are they shrinking questions or are they expansion questions? And if you spend all your time in shrinking questions, you're going to have a life that doesn't really change much. But if you spend more time on these expansion questions, that's when magic happens. So it's been an absolute pleasure being here with you guys today. I've absolutely loved it. And if you had any nuggets, please, DM me, let me know your takeaway. And I can't wait for you to use the confident pricing formula because I want you to realize that there is a way to do it and it's fun and exciting for you and your business.
Thank you, Yasmin. It's been so good. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I hope to see you on the next episode.
All right. Bye.
Bye.